Yeah. I'm back. Oh, Greensboro, I'm back. Oh, you see it. Yeah, we downtown, baby. It's another episode coming right at you. I done been around the world and back, and I'm coming right here live, standing here downtown Greensboro, holding it down. GSOTV. Shout out to everybody out there viewing. Hey, look, it's Black History Month. You know we got to get into it. It's Black History Month. Let's go. First of all, I want to give a shout out. We got to give a shout out to the person who started Black History Month. It actually started as Black History Week, and that man is Carter G Woodson. I encourage all of y'all to go check out Carter G Woodson's book. Carter G Woodson was an author and a historian. He's the one that started Black History Week. And like I said, he wrote a book titled The Miseducation of the Negro. Now, The Miseducation of the Negro was a great book. Really opened my eyes to a lot of things. So I encourage y'all to check that out. It's Black History Month. Let's go. What can I say? Another figure of mine, who really pops out, who has always popped out ever since I read his biography, was Malcolm X. I encourage everybody, whether you black, white, whatever, to read the Autobiography of Malcolm X by Alex Haley. It's definitely an eye-opener. It was a game changer for me, you know what I'm saying? And, the story of Malcolm X is just a terrific story to see him transition from a street hustler, gangster, pimp. He pretty much had thug life on lock, you know what I'm saying, for him turning to a prisoner, going to prison, and then his whole transition into the man that he became, the leader of the Black Muslim movement, to one of the greatest socio-political thinkers of our time. Is just crazy. He went from Detroit Red to Malcolm X to El Hajj Malik Shabazz, and it's just a book that I encourage everybody to read. It's Black History Month. Let's go. Yeah. So, with that being said, I'd like to ask, what does it mean to be black in America? Ask yourself, what does it mean to be black in America? What's the condition of Black America currently? Personally, I would have to say Black America is in bad shape. If we're talking about a whole, we're talking about a collective, as a whole race, I say we're in bad shape. I say things are worse than ever. I say we need to get it together real quick. You know what I'm saying? And I say that because I see things a little differently, I guess. I don't know. Did the 60s civil rights movement work? We've gone into this subject before. Are we in a better condition now than we were then? I would have to say no. Ask yourself, are we? Carter G. Woodson, on the cover of Carter G. Woodson's book, The Miseducation of the Negro, he has a picture of a black woman with chains around her brain, or chains around her head, chains around her mind, which symbolizes chains or shackles around her mind. To me, this symbolizes, and it goes into a little bit in the book, that even though the chains when we were enslaved came off of our hands and feet, they put the chains around our minds, so now our minds are enslaved. Malcolm X talks about that same condition as well. W.E.B. Du Bois, another great author for y'all to check out, The Souls of Black Folk, great book, talks about that condition as well. Are we in our right minds? Or are we still operating with the colonized mind? If you ask me, our minds have been programmed, conditioned, and colonized, and we are still under a system of control by those who have colonized us. We have the minds of our oppressors. but we have the physiology, the biology of our African ancestors. Yeah. Yeah. It's Black History Month, baby. Let's go. Let's talk about it. I can sit here and talk all day, you know what I'm saying, about that type of stuff. But y'all might not want to hear from me. Y'all might want to hear from me. I don't know. But it doesn't matter because we're going to go to another one of my favorite figures in Black history. This man was an author. He was a speaker, a lecturer. He's one of the greatest scholars that we had in our conscious community. Rest in peace, Dr. Amos Wilson. This man really sticks out as far as one of my favorite lecturers. I watched all of his YouTube videos, and he really breaks down the condition of being Black in America so well from so many angles. So hey, we gonna check him out. It's GSOTV, JG, the GSO General, back home. You know what I'm saying? We downtown. I'm loving it. It's Black History Month. Dr. Amos Wilson. Let's go.
The so-called ghettos, the high levels of unemployment, the miseducation, the overflow of drugs, the overflow of weapons, the tremendous attack of the mass media on the desiring structure of our youth, using their own music and their own culture to inculcate into them all kinds of desires and tastes, which the society is not prepared to put them in a position to satisfy, and therefore literally tantalizing them into criminal activity. The change in the very nature of the Black family. You must recognize the so-called single-headed Black family is essentially a phenomena that has occurred since the 1970s. This was not typical of Black adolescents before that time. You must realize the fantastic change that has occurred in the social and political nature of Black life in the last 20 years. It has been profound. That is one of the reasons why you cannot compare, if you're an adult, my age and maybe a bit younger, you cannot compare your adolescence on a whole with the adolescence of the current Black youth today. Not by a long shot. Up to the end of the 60s and in the early 70s, the large majority of Black families were still headed by two members. How is news used by the establishment? What is the role of newspapers in the establishment? Do papers report the news, or do they make the news? You have to come to a newspaper and to news media with these kinds of questions in mind. We would argue that to a great good extent, a lot of the issues just mentioned flow from the attempt to separate us from our identity, and in many instances reflect issues around people who are trying to escape their identity. I made the argument in Black-on-Black violence that the Black-on-Black criminal, to a great extent, is a white racist in Black skin. A person who has internalized white racist attitudes and has identified with his victimizers and expresses his victimization by victimizing other Black people. That his behavior reflects the absence of an appropriate Black and African identity. And that much of the unemployment and much of the other issues flow from an absence or an incomplete African identity. We get quotations from various experts here, including Mr. Julius Lester, a professor of Judaic studies, speaking of identity here, at the University of Massachusetts, says that being black has evolved into a form of social fascism in the past 2 decades, especially on campus. So whites have stopped being fascist and stopped ruling. So the issue now is not white fascism or white racism, but black fascism. A related article, of course, that came out again on December 2nd, 1991, Black-White Marriages Rise, but Social Acceptance Lags. Then on the same page, Two Who Lost Their Way in Urban Wilds, a culture of violence takes a deadly toll in East New York, talking about the young man that was killed in the school over there. Then we came right back around here on November 25th, gold earrings, this is the New York Times again, gold earrings and protection. More girls take road to violence. And now they're talking about young ladies who seem to be engaged more and more in violence in order to buy gold earrings and other things. And looking at our own papers here, you saw 2 pieces perhaps this weekend in the City Sun, Clinton Cox, Am I Black Enough for You? Of course, in the Cox Manor writes a very pertinent and very learned piece here. And another in the New York Amsterdam News, Two Kinds of Blackness by Manning Marable. Cox, I think, makes some very pertinent statements here, as well as Marable, of course. It seems, according to the article, he again is referring to the New York Times pieces, that black people are no longer sure who's black. I had failed somehow to notice this phenomenon among my acquaintances. And he makes, what is this concept of identity and of self? What is this concept of individuality? What is an individual anyway? We don't spend enough time thinking about that. One of the things that we must debunk immediately is the idea that a person can be completely individual and separated completely from society. In fact, individuality has no meaning other than in a society. If you are in the world completely alone, no one else existed, why would you even think about individuality? There's no meaning whatsoever. Why would you even think about identity, race, or anything else? These things come to have meaning and operate within a social context. The concept of personal and social identity takes on meaning relative to other people, relative to a social system. Identity, by its very nature, is a social concept. It is no way you're going to escape the social in your personality. One's identity begins before he or she is even born. It begins in the womb itself. The society begins to shape the personality from the very first moment of conception. However one's identity is defined and assigned, however such an identity is expressed, it has social ramifications and produces social effects. Because one acts one's identity out within a social system. I don't care how you define it. If you're living in a society, it has social effects and social influences. Individual definition and expression is achieved within the social structure. Self-identity is confirmed by repeated and relatively consistent social interactions. To have an identity means that you have some kind of boundaries around your mental and physical personality. Those boundaries have to be defined relative to those outside of those boundaries. Those boundaries are maintained by those structures and people outside. In fact, one does not achieve an identity in the fullest sense until that identity is confirmed by other people. You know, you can say, I am the king, if you want to. You can say it all you want to, but until others defer to you and bow to your presence and follow your command, in reality, you're not. It takes the behavior and attitude and the relations of other people to confirm what you may even call an individual identity. They have to relate to you in some particular set of ways. The idea then that you can have an identity unconfirmed, unrelated to a social system is totally illogical. This man who says he is neither black nor white will still turn around and call himself a singer, which requires what? An audience. People to listen, people to buy records, people to respond to him as what? A singer. If he were in the middle of the forest, totally alone, what difference would it make if he sang or not? How could he define himself? The word singer, the word dancer, only has meaning within a social, political context. It's just like the context people talk about of being independently wealthy. How are you going to be independently wealthy? These are my dollars. A dollar is nothing but a printed piece of paper. That is all it is in essence. The dollar is a social instrument, and its value must be accepted by other people. Therefore, it can never belong to you alone. It only has value because it is a social instrument. You never own it by yourself, for yourself, and to yourself. If you did, it would not be accepted as what? Money. But of course, the bourgeois society wants to create this so that it can make the poor and these other people it rips off think that they do not give meaning to wealth and riches. And that ultimately what we call wealth and what we call riches is a creation of the group, not of some person who lifts him or herself up by their bootstrap and who is a self-made person. A self-made person is self-made within a social context and is maintained in their wealth by a social context. And therefore, all of the money that they have ultimately is money that belongs to the group and is a group creation. But of course, we want to run a game on your head to take your money, use all of your money, use it against you, saying it's all mine and I'm independently wealthy. We never think about, and there's so many other concepts like private property, total thievery. You never own any property. You just rent it. You said you paid for it. You finished your mortgage. Stop paying your taxes. See how long you got it and watch the group take it right back from you. You don't own it. You just rent it. You see? But this is the game that's run on the mind of people. What makes an individual, what makes us individual is our unique ways of integrating and expressing and relating to community, to shared social knowledge, techniques, resources, and values. The material we individualize is in essence social material, made available by a social system, a set of social relations. In other words, we are individual in our individual ways of dealing with social things. And consequently, there were many of us during that struggle who thought that white folks and their behavior and attitudes, their privileges and so forth, represented what it means to be free, without realizing that if to be free is to be like one's oppressor, then the day that one becomes like one's oppressor, one becomes self-oppressing. And one becomes an ally in the oppression of one's own people. And again, in black-on-black violence, this is what I'm saying, that the black-on-black violent criminal, in a sense, becomes an ally of white racism. He wants to imitate the murderous attitudes of the white man being the greatest murderer the world has ever seen, the greatest killer, robber, and rapist the world has ever known. Yes, I used to hear you say you want your children to be just like them without thinking. Our enslavers, the assassinators of our personality, those people who lynched us, those people who deprived us, those people who killed nations and nations of Indians and others, those people who, wherever they stepped on this earth, the local populations were degraded, those people who developed great death machines and polluted the earth and the world itself. Those killers and murderers is what we desired to be like, and represented to many of us what it means to be free. When you take upon yourself that definition of what it means to be free, there is no wonder then that we engage in the killing of ourselves. When we identify with killers and identify with people who kill us, then we ultimately must engage in suicide and self-destruction. And this is often what has happened. There were too many who read freedom to being like white folk. And they fought then the oppression that was coming to us all, not to transform a system and not to reduce the power of an oppressive group, but to gain the right to more closely identify with their oppressors. Many were fighting using the concept of blackness not so much to identify with us, but to dissociate themselves from us. And that's almost sort of hidden in this concept of once we gain our great freedom, people would not see us as colored. They would look at us as some form of abstraction. Why can't people see you in your reality? If you are black or whatever color you are, why cannot people see you as you are? Why is it that we demand that they play some kind of perceptual trick on themselves and not see us in our reality and in the color we present to them, since they have color cones in their eyes designed to see color, and then deal with us honestly and fairly? Have we bought the idea then that if people see us in our true color, that they are bound to mistreat us? This leads us to the idea then that it is our color that is the cause of our oppression, and not the madness and insanity of others who are oppressing us. And therefore, when you internalize this kind of concept, you see freedom as dissociating yourself from your color and trying to get others not to look at your colored reality, so that both can be insane, so that the other who's looking cannot see you for who you are, and you cannot see yourself for who you are. And therefore there were those who fought as black people in order not to be seen as black people. The very essence of schizophrenia, again, and madness, is dissociation, a cutting off of the individual from his reality, and a form of alienation. There were other of us who fought and fell behind the black banner during the civil rights era, not as Maddox tells us, I think very importantly here, Attorney Maddox, not so much for civil rights as for consumer rights. And it becomes sort of interesting that the civil rights struggle centered around lunch counters and retail stores. And you begin to realize that while this certainly was not the whole of civil rights, that there was an aspect having to do with consumption, the right to take our money and give it to people who hated our guts. And we see this still going on today. And again, we talk about this in black on black violence. People don't want to live next to you, hate the sight of you, miseducate the children, want to continue their oppression. And then what do? Beat each other up so that we can carry our money to them, buy the bus loads, and feel proud of ourselves and feel good after we've given it to them. And then we'll say, why are you doing that? It's my right as a United States citizen. I'm telling you, you look at it very closely, and you will see to a great extent many of the rights that we claim we have were really set up in a way so that the white community could get greater access to black resources and money. And watch, as we became desegregated, we engage in the wholesale disinvestment of the black community. And to a great extent, it was a result of getting caught up in these consumer rights, which is another game, by the way, to buy what I want, when I want it, as an expression of freedom. Watch that concept. I was talking to one man here in Chicago who was complaining about his daughter being mistreated by his white neighbors, he being the only black one in the neighborhood. What can I do about that? That's right. Oh no, but it's my right to live where I want to live. And you know, this is the expression of my right. And it's interesting that when we get through defining our rights, it almost always means carrying our money to white folk and giving our resources to white folk. But the ultimate thing that it means is that white oppression did not end there, did it? His right to buy into a neighborhood made his oppression even more clear. He brought his children into even more naked oppression by the very rights that he thought he had won and that he thought he was exercising. And to a great extent, the black community had run into that impasse. After getting all the fair housing laws and all of the lunch counter laws and the desegregation laws and the other laws passed, we were fit to be free at last, and yet we look up, and where are we? Suffering, still talking about what? The miseducation of our children, still talking about criminality in our communities, still talking about disease running rampant, still talking about poverty and unemployment. It was, as the French says, the more things change, the more they what? Remain the same. We begin to realize then that this freedom of consumption was not liberation. You have to recognize then, and we must recognize that there's a difference in class consciousness and individualized consciousness. And what is going on here today is an attempt to impose on black people an individualized consciousness and to make us believe that by being totally free and disconnected as individuals, we will be free as a people. That is the very opposite of what is going to occur. The more we push for our own unique individual freedom, the more we will come under the domination and oppression of others as a group. There is no ultimate individual freedom, ladies and gentlemen, as black people, if there is not group freedom. The powerless individual